What's up, everybody? Good morning. I'm running a little late here. So I apologize. It's about 7 after 9. And today we're talking about 5 ways to grow your musical network. And I'm going to give it a couple minutes here for some people to show up. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As you show up, please let me know that you're here. Let me know that you can hear me. Um, all that jazz, so I can make sure that I'm not just like speaking into a void. Not to avoid, but avoid. Yeah, we're talking about 5 ways to grow your musical network. And this is my second live stream, and it's kind of early to do a live stream, but yo, Kevin. It's kind of early to do a live stream, but I'm gonna try it anyway. I was having some I had a funny thing happen this morning because we have 2 kids. I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old's still in a crib. And so my wife and I were having our coffee, and then we heard the bedroom door open, and we assumed we would see um our 5-year-old come out, and no, our 2-year-old had figured out how to escape her crib, and she came in and surprised us. So it definitely had us a little freaked out. I don't know why I told you that, but I thought it was funny. So today we're talking about 5 ways to improve your network. And so this is something that I actually get asked about a lot, surprisingly. I shouldn't necessarily say surprisingly, but I'll say that I think you'll find my tactics surprisingly simple. But I want you to make sure that you're really coming into this with a mind of patience. Okay. I think it's very important that we have a mindset here that, and this is actually the first point, that good networking is just good relationships. Like, we're not actually trying to get something from somebody in the initial stage. And that's tough to remember. I think we have to remember that just like planting a tree, like, it's gonna take time for the seed to grow. So the best connections that I've had turned out that they didn't actually become anything for sometimes years, and they ended up just being great friends. And so are you guys getting distortion on that end? I'm trying not to like get too ramped up here at 9 in the morning. But they just ended up being great friends. So I just think it's so important that we understand that the best networking comes from genuine relationships and not a business card exchange. So if you're going into, let's say, a networking event, I went to a thing called, what was it called? Oh my Lord, I'm the worst right now. Creative Mornings. That's what it was. So we have a Creative Mornings get together here in my town, and my wife told me about it. And she's a visual artist. And dude, Scotty, what's up? So we went in to this thing, and I was like, okay, I got to meet all these new people. And honestly, I'm just kind of an introvert when it comes to like new folks, so it sort of freaks me out a little bit. And then I just reminded myself, like, no, the goal here is to look for the authenticity within this event and just find people that I connect with first. And I've actually been listening to the Storybrand podcast. If you haven't listened to that at all, I would highly suggest it. It talks a lot about building your brand as a story, but there's a book called Captivate. And the author here talks about how we can actually become sort of the most, I don't know, like, exciting person in the room, or just to easily start a conversation. And part of that has to do with just how you approach the person that you're talking to. So I've started doing a couple of things right away, and I've noticed immediately that my conversations have changed. So I would challenge you guys to try this. I think this is an interesting experiment, if nothing else. But so what I do now is I make sure, one, that my hands are out of my pockets. According to this gal, there's something that happens subconsciously that when we show up with our hands in our pockets, people are like, in their subconscious brain, they're like, are you a threat? Are you like about to pull a knife on me or like shiv me or something? And that just comes from like all that DNA that's backed up in us just trying to be in survival mode, right? And so just keeping my hands out of my pockets, and then I go in for the handshake. And my first question is usually, what are you working on that's exciting right now? And I actually put that, if you saw it in the new community tab, on YouTube that I got access to. So that was what I wrote yesterday. What are you doing that's exciting? And I think that's such a powerful statement, because it puts somebody in a position where maybe they're not a professional in the field they're working on yet, but it gives them an opportunity to tell you the thing that they're actually excited about, as opposed to what do you do? And they may feel obligated to say, well, I work at the local gas station as a clerk, but like what I really try to do is this. Instead, they can say, oh, well, I'm working on this music project, or I'm working on this album, or whatever. And you just sort of cut past the fat, as opposed to, trying to like get in all the fluffy situations. The bracket says asking about passion projects is a great point, even if they're repping a different company. Absolutely. And one thing that I've found for me personally is the more of these events that I go to that aren't necessarily other musicians, I make some of the most interesting contacts with other artists in general, like visual artists and these people end up knowing all these other groups of people that I never knew. And that's way more powerful for me personally right now than, going into a room full of musicians where I know 60% of them already, right? So just understanding, to keep a point, I'm trying not to get on too big of a soapbox here. This is why I edit my videos. So just understanding that you're going in it to build a relationship first. You're trying to actually gain a friendship. So treat that person as a friend rather than a business contact. Just learn something about them and see what you can find as your natural connection. Number 2, don't make it all about you. So something else that this gal talks about in this book is when you're kind of asking about something, you're going to try to find that place that you can actually connect. So that moment, the Me Too moment, where you're like, and this is a good way to bring yourself into the conversation or into the fold without taking the attention off of the person that you're trying to meet. And so let's say that I'm talking to the bracket here, and I'm like, yo, dude, which if you don't know the bracket, you should go follow his channel. He does like synthesizer stuff, but all the stuff is on like VHS camcorders and everything. It's super cool. So go check it out. But if I was talking to him and we were chatting about things and he brought up synthesizers, and I was like, oh, dude, I love X synth and I'm really into that thing, then we've made a connection that's a common ground. And that's way, way more powerful, because I haven't taken the point away from him or said, hey, well, I do this thing. I've now brought myself into his world in a way that's, I think, a lot more natural and a lot more powerful. And that brings me to point number 3. The fastest way to grow your network is to introduce 2 people who can benefit from each other. So let's say that I'm chatting with somebody, and we'll just stick with the bracket. So he and I are talking, we get on a rant, and then he's like, but I have this issue where my synth keeps blowing up or something. I don't know. Dude, that's awesome. I know this guy who that's what he specializes in. I'd love to put you he says all the time, I'd love to put you guys in touch. And that is so big. I used to do this and not even realize it. And then it would come back to me where somebody said, man, I ended up becoming buddies with this guy, and he and I have teamed up, and we're doing all these gigs together. And it's been a huge, huge help just because, you made the contact. And it was just because I thought they would hit it off. But it turns out that this is just a great way to keep. And I know that this seems very transactional, but I try to see it as like we're trying to give somebody gifts in these conversations, right? So yes, it seems transactional, and maybe there's a little tactical like advice here, but we're looking for opportunities to give them something that's actually going to help them, right? So Magnus Ernie, once again, so glad I found your channel. Man, I appreciate that so much. I'm so glad that you're here. Um, Seriously, it means everything. Thanks for saying that. So as I just started to understand more that those kind of relationships worked, and I just started doing that more often. And does that always give me something? No. But what ends up happening is on the back end of that, I'm the person that somebody's going to come to and say, well, Lyndon's got a lot of great connections. And so let's just talk to him about these kind of opportunities or these things. And they would say the same thing about you. So the more that you can make connections with people, the more you're growing that network, the more that your little bubble, your little circle starts to grow. And that's going to feed back into you and your business and your music that you're trying to put together. Let's see. Number 4, reconnect and don't keep score. Okay. So my points on reconnection are, let's say that you're a producer and you're trying to work with a new artist. This is something that this was kind of my tactic for a while. So I go to a show and I saw a band and I really thought they were great and I wanted to work with them. So I would go up to one of them or all of them if I could and just introduce myself. Kind of do the same thing I talked about in the beginning, just try to find ways to make a connection. And I wasn't saying to them off the bat, like, hey, I'm a producer. This is what I do. I just made the connection. And what I found is that if I got into good conversation, you got to remember that not everybody is your ideal client. Not everybody is your ideal collaborator. So if you're thinking, oh, I need to work with everybody, it's just not going to happen. So the more naturally you can kind of let these things occur, I think that's just a better way to approach it. So if I felt like I made a natural connection with somebody, the next day I might follow up with them on Facebook. And of course, some of these people, I was actually like looking them up on social media and kind of seeing who I wanted to go check out as potential working relationships. And so I would follow up with them and just say, hey, pleasure to meet you last night. I thought you guys were amazing, and I'm so glad that I got to be a part of the show. Thanks so much again for the chat. And then if all your ducks in a row and you have everything lined up where they can easily get to you and see what you do within your social networking bios and all that jazz. Sorry, words are hard this morning. Then you're gonna automatically let them stalk you, and you don't have to go in and say anything. And then if your work speaks for itself, they're gonna follow up again. And then it's going to be a lot easier to come in with the soft sell of like, hey, I'd love to work with you sometime if you're ever interested in it. And with that, you've padded that approach or that sell point with a few actual connection opportunities, right? So you've given them a chance to get to know you a little bit. You've talked to them a little bit. They've got a face to the name. And all of a sudden, there's a little bit of a relationship that's kind of formed there. And that's a lot healthier approach, and usually is going to end up getting you a lot more in-depth clients than the other points. Adrian Perez, what equipment should you recommend when starting music production for starters? Okay, cool. I'll get into that, Adrian. And if you guys have questions, please leave them in the comments, and I'll gladly answer a few of those in this live stream. So make sure that you're reconnecting and that you're not keeping score with who's reconnecting back with you. Don't get caught up in the fact that some people just aren't going to touch base. Let it go. And that is my 5th point and final point on this. Don't be afraid to let someone go, and remind yourself that it takes time for the seeds to grow. These are like, these aren't going to just happen overnight. The bracket, digging it, man. Love these points. Thanks so much, dude. I'm so glad you're here, Scotty. So I just think that this is like a big thing, and it's hard for me too, because every person that doesn't get back to me, I immediately am like, oh no, they hate me, or whatever it is. I just start to let it get to me internally. And so it's important that we just let it go, move on to the next thing. make the next contact, do the next move. And yes, again, this may seem a little transactional in the approach, but I think as long as you're giving to them, you're giving value to them by letting them kind of make that connection from their own place, and really, showing interest in what they do. I think you're going to make a lot deeper connections. And this just works with building good friendships and good relationships in general. So I'd love to take a couple questions here, either about this or anything else, before I go. So I'm going to give a second for some people to ask questions if they have any. And in the meantime, I will touch on Adrian's point. And Adrian, I'd actually like to know, what equipment would you recommend if you're trying to get into it? What's your budget? I think that's a better question, Adrian. So let me know what your budget is, so I can give you a little more of a good read here. Timaholic, good to see you here. Thank you. So yeah, any other questions as I'm waiting for Adrian here, let me know. I'd also love to know, I asked this last time, did you ever look into AWOL? I actually didn't get to look into it too much. I've been swamped. So I'm working on, personally, what I'm working on is working on some like licensing stuff for a company out in LA. And so a friend of mine and I, are writing some things, and we're working on some revisions for a track. And so between that and trying to do the YouTube channel, it's been kind of a hot mess to get new things, and also just opening these new doors of like communication in our Facebook group. So if you guys aren't in the Facebook group yet, you should definitely go check that out. And I'm going to give the link. So if you want to dig a little deeper into your personal music business, then, we're trying to just give each other good feedback on projects that you're working on. I love like digging into people's songs and, just giving my input, and just saying, what I can to help. And then I'm just trying to help other people do the same thing. So make sure, if you want to get involved, I'm going to give the link here. How do you go about improving your songwriting and getting better at it? Let's see. There we go. Good question. Good question. I'm getting to it, but I can't. You'll find and you'll learn the more that you're here. I can't do two things at once. So let's see. So there's the Facebook group. Please come join us, and get in that, because I think we're gonna do some really cool stuff as we're digging into it. Okay, so I'm gonna touch on Adrian's thing, even though he's not responding with the budget situation yet. I'm gonna assume that you're trying to start production on a budget. So I think a lot of the Focusrite stuff is good on the front end. There's really any interface that you can kind of afford, I would say get it. Get one like 2-channel interface. But I think the main thing, when somebody asks me, well, what can you do to get started in production? I think you have to ask yourself, like, what do you do? What are your strengths? If you're a songwriter, yeah, the bracket, whatever you can get your mitts on. Exactly. Like, if you're a songwriter that plays acoustic guitar, then acoustic guitar is probably something that you need to be able to record. So you need to buy an interface and a mic. Something like this would be a fine starter. This mic's $100. Less if you get it used. So this is a Shure SM57. This thing has been on tons of hit records, and it's so cheap, and it's a great starter mic for somebody to use. So I would just say the Complete Audio 6 rules so hard for like $200. Great. Yeah. And please, if you're watching this and you have something that you're using, post it in the comments for other people to check out. But, ask your friends, see what they're using, buy something used. If you're just getting started, just get started making stuff. I have students and clients that this is the thing that they can't get past, is they're like, how do I get started? And getting started means being okay with sucking and just like putting shit out there. Pardon. Oh, I forgot. I'm trying not to do like the cussing thing, but make sure you're just like putting stuff out there for people to see. Otherwise, it's not, you're not ever going to get any headway. The only way that people are going to hear about you is if they actually see and hear the work. So just start doing the work. I wouldn't get caught up too much in the gear right now by any stretch. You get to a certain point, then you start thinking about upgrading. And my policy on upgrading is don't upgrade until you're at a point where the gear is actually going to make a difference in your sound. In the beginning, it's not. If you don't have anything past experience, just learning the workflow, learning the DAW or whatever, the workstation software, all that's way more important. 100% yes, starting is all about finishing. Yes. Finished is better than perfect. Finished is better than perfect by any stretch. Let's see. How do you go about improving your songwriting and getting better at it? Harry says that. So Harry, I would say the same thing. One thing that I would suggest in this situation, and I'm being dead serious, I'm not trying to like pull a plug. I would get in the Facebook group, and what I'm trying to cultivate here is opportunities for all of us to have a little community where we're pitching stuff to each other. I posted a little idea that I took like, an hour on, and it's like a 20-second clip of an 8-bar phrase, and I'm like, hey, what do you guys think about it? And we got other people that are starting to do the same thing. Hey, what do you think? Let's get some constructive feedback going. So Harry, I would say jump in that Facebook group and just be writing, be finding people that are going to give you honest opinions on your work. And that's something that I love to do. And again, it's just going to be an opinion, but I think, one thing that I always got was somebody, having a few people in my life that weren't afraid to say when something wasn't very good. And so, and again, not very good is relative, but places where you can improve, I guess is probably a better way to put it. So I'm not afraid to say things like that. So if you guys are wanting constructive feedback, feel free to jump in there, and other people are doing the same thing. Are there any judicial terms and conditions I should be aware of being a songwriter going to a producer? Common agreements, maybe none, I should know about to keep the relationship and everyone happy. Relationship healthy and everyone happy. This is a tough one. I think here's what I like to do in my situation with terms and conditions, splits, and things like that as I'm working on songs with people or collaborating with people specifically. If I think it's very important, and the way that I kind of do this is just have something in writing. I'll send it in an email, and then there's like a paper trail at least to say like sort of what it is. And I'll say, we gotta usually at the very top, I'll say, I'd like to do this split. I'd like to just in a lot of instances. So like the stuff that we're working on for the licensing company in Los Angeles, we're just doing a 50-50 split on everything. So, and we just made that point up front, like, hey, we're going to have the dirty money conversation right away. And we said, whatever we make, we'll split down the middle. And, you may find later on, based on the work that you do or the time that you put in, that split doesn't seem fair. And then you can try to renegotiate that. But I always just come from a place of, you know, wherever I start it is usually where it's going to stay. I don't really try to renegotiate. If it just isn't working, I'll just move on to something else and or someone else to work with and kind of do it that way. Um, Let me know, Magnus, that if that helps. I think it's just it can seem a little weird. I wouldn't be afraid to have a contract, and if you're looking for a contract, just Google like a template. I wouldn't be afraid to have one if you feel like it's necessary. And sometimes people don't understand that as a thing. I always do deposits up front for clients that I haven't worked with before, even if I know them. So there's a 40% deposit that's non-refundable to do like mixes or mastering from me. And the reason I do that is because that gives me enough money to know that you're going to pay me, and it gives me an opportunity to get started. And then, I'll send like a streaming link, and then you get the full link whenever the rest of the payment is received. And if you just are consistent with all that stuff, you'll find that it becomes easier and easier to just make that part of your conversation. And then people don't even really flinch at it because they just get used to it. And if they like working with you, it's not going to matter. Right. Um, Let me know if that helps. And if there's anything that I didn't really hit on with that. Um, introvert to introvert. Got any advice for how to work up the confidence to show up to a show, conference, meeting, or meet up solo? Yes, that's a great question. Mm, I think so. The bracket's talking about here working up confidence to show up to a show or a meetup. So and going by yourself. Like, so what I ended up doing recently is going to a big YouTubers conference out in Los Angeles called Vid Summit, and it was the whole idea was to learn more and do more networking on the YouTube space, because I see the power in social media and the options to impact people and connect with people like you guys, and that makes me so excited. But it's a lot easier for me to sit here and talk to you guys like this than it would be for us to all be in a room and me not know who any of you are. So one thing that I kind of did was just set small goals in the same way that I might do with music. So I just kind of said, okay, today I want to meet 3 new people or whatever, and that's over the course of the whole day. And just kind of made a point to approach somebody, that maybe wasn't necessarily talking to anybody or something like that, and that might be um another introverted personality. And so, it's tough to be an introvert and try to network. It's really tough. But I think the only thing we can do is sort of just take small steps toward meeting new people. And a lot of times I'll even do, this sounds really stupid, but I'll do like practice things. So if I know that there's a meeting coming up, like maybe I'll be in a convenience store and I'll just go up to somebody and be like, "How, you doing all right today? How are you?" And just try to make a point, knowing that that conversation is not going to go anywhere because they're buying Gatorade at a freaking 7-Eleven. So, but that gives me a chance to just like expel some sort of energy toward them and get used to just kind of making a little bit of a contact. Um, and honestly, that does help, because the more that I know that somebody's actually going to respond, the better it is. And having these like, sort of the things I talked about in the beginning, these ideas of, okay, well, I'm gonna lead with something that puts them in the position of speaking, actually makes it a lot easier, because I'm encouraging them to give me their story as opposed to me having to give mine, which is a lot more uncomfortable. And then eventually it'll just lead, hopefully, to something that like matches you. So hopefully that helps. Alexander Valor says, "I want to meet you too." And now Alex, actually, if you guys should hit him up, because he works for Google, and he is a hot shot. So make sure that you check him out. Let's see. Oscar Jones, do you have any advice on how best to get booked for shows in pubs, bars, and venues of all kinds? Um, Oscar, are you doing original material, or are you doing cover material? Is my first question. And the second question is, are you really trying to get booked in bars, or are you trying to just book a show? That's what I want to know. So if you can answer those two things, I think that would be helpful to me, because I think there's different approaches based on what your goals are. If you guys, the more you guys dig into this channel and the stuff that I think about, like, everybody seems to have a short-term idea, like, I want to book a show, I want to promote a record, I want to do these things. But musicians are notorious for selling themselves short by having only short-term goals. You can't you can't build a real business without having a long-term idea, um and then reverse engineering that to where you want to be, in a year, 5 years, 10 years. And this is where I think musicians sort of sell themselves short, unfortunately. So I'll kind of tangent on that, Oscar, for a second, and then go ahead and feel free to answer the question that I asked. So, why bars, I guess, for you, and then are you doing cover gigs or your own material? So, have a cover band and do an original solo act too. Okay, so for a cover band, the first thing I would do is actually, in both instances, the first thing I would do is see if you can put together your own event. Um, this is really beneficial in a lot of ways, because I think if you can create your own event in a small space that you know you can get 20 to 50 people at, which is not that daunting, right? And it's a house show. It's like just going to be a cool thing that you can then document and put out there. I think that's awesome. And you'll actually, what's interesting to me is you're actually seeing a lot of singer songwriters sort of revert back to this technique where they're doing a lot of house shows. And the reason they're doing that is because to just sing and do something as a solo act, and Oscar, I'm sure you can attest to this, like to do something as a solo act in front of people is really hard. Okay. Because just an acoustic guitar and your voice, unless you are just lights out, unique, and amazing, is really tough to keep new people's attention. So I think your best bet initially for the cover gig and the solo gig is to throw your own event and try to get 20 to 50 people packed in this house, make it feel like when people walk out of there, they feel like it was the best thing they've ever been to in that, like set the vibe, put lights up, all kinds of lamps, whatever you can do to like really make it vibey and cool. Maybe have a friend like DJ stuff in between acts or whatever, get a couple people on board otherwise. And so what you then do is also have somebody help document the situation, because what you're going to then have is footage and photos of you in front of people. And so if you're trying to book the cover gigs, this is so important because then you can repurpose that footage to go and try to pitch to venues. So you can say, let's say then all you need to do is like take your band and you guys record like a cover tune and then you put it out there. Good way to get social media content too. The bracket says absolutely. This is like you can double down on all this content. And so, taking that footage and maybe recording a cover song and then just kind of syncing up lyrics where you can, lots of footage of people having a great time, just a really low budget, easy music video kind of thing that you can then give to promoters and show that, people that are going to be there are going to be having a good time. And then, for the cover gig, the thing I would do is just email every promoter. And we used to do this thing where we would actually email in the early days, email labels and promoters and stuff as a manager. So we would make up a fake manager name and then just send the email out and say, "Hey, you know, I'm working on behalf of Oscar Jones, great singer-songwriter," or, whatever. And then and that just gave them an opportunity to connect with somebody and it felt a little more legit. And so feel free to use that if you've got the balls to do so. I think it's pretty awesome. Um, so anyway, just being able to then pitch to as many promoters as you can with that content once you have that in play. And not to mention at that event, you're probably going to make more money than you would at a bar gig because, you can charge a suggested donation of $5 or $10. And a lot of bars aren't going to pay you out of the gate. They're going to want you to get in there and make sure you can pull people. So just, be cautious of that. And I would always say it's better to start with kind of making your own thing. As far as like your own gig, from there, it's going to be the same. You can use that content to put out there on your social media platforms. You can repurpose that in a ton of different ways to make music videos, to make a live like video of a song. And that's the cool part. You can make 2 music videos out of one thing where it's like, here's sort of a live video with the song behind it. And maybe it's even a different song, just like you playing, and you don't have to make it obvious that it's a different tune. And you can do like a live video from that performance as well and repurpose it that way. And that could be cool. So, and then if you're trying to book bars, again, it's kind of the same. You just get out there with promoters. But best thing for original material is, I think, team up with other bands and artists that already have a following, even if it's small, or already have a connection, and jump on as support. And then go in and talk to every person that works there, every single bar staff, every, whoever is there that works at the bar. You need to be talking to them and telling them, "Hey, I'm so glad that I'm here. I really appreciate you taking care of us." And just I can't tell you how much further and how much more often we've, when I was doing a lot of touring, we got more stuff just because the bar staff or the owner ended up liking us as people, and then they'd like us as a band, and then like, we want to get you in front of people, so let's make this happen. I'm probably gonna do one more question and then I gotta go because I have a class today. I'm doing a class with this guy Tim Schmoyer, who's an incredible YouTube educator, and so we have a class today on storytelling that I'm very excited about. Been putting time into Instagram recently. It's the whole game. I've been putting Souch time. Sorry, Timaholic. Hit me up with that again. Let me know what you're talking about. You should peep my Insta. It's a vibe. All right, Timaholic. Is it just under Timaholic? We're gonna peep it right now, live. The bracket says, talking to the bar staff to your first rule, make friends regardless of whether or not you think they can do something for you. Absolutely. That's so huge. Like, being nice is a big deal. I mean, I've gotten tours because I'm a nice guy. Like, so don't shows and all kinds of stuff. Like, I 9 times out of 10, I might not be the best player, but because I'm a nice enough guy and just like hanging out with people, it makes it a lot more easier to be put on a gig. So that's such a good rule. Okay, Timaholic. We're gonna do this, guys, and then we're gonna call it. Okay, Timaholic has 540 subscribers. I don't know if that's going to focus in. Everybody go follow his Instagram. Okay. Let's see what we got.
Foam.
You got some foam.
One thing I'm not too sure about, since I've literally never built out a studio in my life, this is the first time you guys are watching. Thanks for being here. I have no idea how to put up the foam properly. I looked up some stuff on the internet, and obviously you want to balance it.
Okay.
We're just going to go for it.
Working on the foam. That's cool. I can get into that. When you're the only straight dude at the gay bar. Oh, nice meme. Good work. And I meme it. There you go. Dad joke for the day. Oh, dude. Yeah. That feels great. Drum cover. Hey, I love that mustache. I think that is incredible.
Let's try to play a really slow beat.
Oh, sweet. Dude, yeah. You're let's see, producer for a lot of hype. And then see what I do is I end up going there and checking that out, making that nasty groove rock, professional party person, always working towards spending more time creating than consuming. Yeah, dude, I love this. I think this is great. One thing, you know, when you're trying to build your personal brand, I would think that, you just got to make sure, like, I think this is good because it's telling me what you do, but like, why do you do it? Like, if you want to really get somebody to attach themselves to you, like, tell them why you do it. And this is hard. This is what I've been working on too. Like, when you can explain to somebody why you do what you do and grab that emotional attachment to it as well. So this Building a Story Brand podcast, you should actually check that out. And Building a Story Brand is actually a great book that you should check out. But the idea being that you need to tell, give people, who you are, the problem that you're going to solve, and why the world is going to be better because of it. And yes, maybe you're a drummer and that's harder to say in that way, but it's just that idea of, like, what really sets you apart a little deeper. I think that would be really something, dude, that's going to, like, just make somebody look at that and say, okay, I know exactly what we're getting into here. And I would honestly check out the Brackets Instagram too, because you go to his page And even if you don't have like a why per se, like what you do have is a flip ton of sense on every single like thing post. And it's amazing because um you just know exactly what you're getting in every video. And I think that's so big. Um and so like you know, a lot of it now is like switched to the VHS thing. So it's really cool. Thank you. Great advice on my question earlier. Broaden my views and will definitely help me. Thanks, Magnus. Appreciate you being here. DJ King Ghost, gonna drop a single before the album. Need some info. Cool. Yeah. Well, so if you DJ King Ghost, I'd go back and watch my previous live video. I'm actually having to wrap up here now, but I'd love to, or I'm trying to do these every Tuesday. So feel free to come back next Tuesday if you want, or hit me up in the private Facebook group. I'll go ahead and link that here. You can join that, and not only me, but other members would be glad to give you some info as well on that. I have video footage from when I was a child all the way until literally yesterday. Wow. Right now, editing a full length documentary of my life, telling my story, and then leading into it. Wow, that is crazy. That's amazing, dude. I would definitely suggest, yeah, keeping that stuff because that's cool. And that's the problem that I have is like not repurposing a lot of the older stuff. So I think maybe a cool idea at Timaholic would be, you know, even on short-term content, like how could you work those old clips into a 1-minute video on Instagram of you like working a groove. So if you're like, you know, like a before and after kind of series or something like that, I think that would be fun. Or I don't know, just different things to kind of use some of that old footage. That would be neat to see. Um, guys, thank you so much. Please go join the private Facebook group if you want. I do also have an email list that I'm working on starting to utilize, and you can sign up for that at soundandpatternsmusic.com. And there you'll also find uh, other things that I do mixing for bands and artists, and also one-on-one coaching for artists and bands to kind of help really dial in your brand and what you're looking at. And so feel free to hit me up there if you'd like to work on some stuff. And yeah, I'm so pumped and pleased that you guys are here. It means the world that you are. I can't even tell you, like having 9 people in here right now as we wrap this up is a big deal to me. So thank you guys. I'm going to try to do this every Tuesday, and I got a new video coming out Thursday or Friday, maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure. It depends. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm going on vacation with my family for Thanksgiving, so we'll figure it out. But have a great holiday if you celebrate it. And I'm thankful for you guys for sure. So have a great rest of your day.